Hello YouTube. Was it a meteorite or an American satellite? What exactly exploded in the sky over Kiev, Ukraine? Military and space experts try to find the answer to this question in Russia and Ukraine. But perhaps we're looking at something completely different that has nothing to do with space. Or something else, and later I'll provide an opinion of a Russian expert who thinks it was a UFO. Let's start at the beginning. On April 19, 2023, a bright flash was seen in the sky over Kiev. At about 2200 hours, an unknown object was seen falling from the sky, and then the sound of an explosion was heard. That evening near Kiev, some fiery body or object fell from the sky, illuminating the midnight sky with a bright and powerful flash. However, there were no reports of casualties and destruction. As a result, the internet was flooded with videos made by Kiev residents. A lot of different hypotheses about the causes of this event immediately appeared on the internet, but the speculation of ordinary people is one thing, and the statements of officials are quite another. Therefore, the most discussed was the statement by the head of the Kiev City Military Administration, Sergei Popko, that the flare over the city was caused by the fall of a NASA satellite. More specifically, it was about the alleged fall of the American Space Observatory Rurcla High Energy Solar Spectroscopic Imager, RHESSI in abbreviation, launched by the American Space Agency NASA back in 2002. The apparatus worked until 2018, after which communication was lost with it. Since 2022, it has already been low enough in orbit, and indeed at any moment it could begin a sharp decline and re-entry into the atmosphere. However, the RHESSI observatory was launched into orbit with an inclination of 38 degrees, a perigee of 579 kilometers, and an apogee of 674 kilometers. This means that the satellite can fall only in the interval between 38 degrees north latitude and 38 degrees south. Ukraine is several hundred kilometers north of this gap. Moreover, the weight of the observatory is very small and is only 293 kilograms. Spacecraft of this size, as a rule, almost completely burned up in the dense layers of the atmosphere. If you look at the footage posted online, we see that the fragment is quite large. To get to Earth in this shape, the object initially had to be the size of a spaceship or an orbital station. That's according to Alexei Anpilogov, president of the Foundation for the Support of Scientific Research and Development of Civil Initiatives. And that's what he confirmed to the Russian media. There are several dozen small satellites like the RHESSI falling every year. At the same time, most of them completely burn up in the upper atmosphere. To an outsider, this picture looks almost like a meteor shower, or as people say, a star fall. NASA also denied that there was the fall of RHESSI on Kiev. The device did indeed descend from orbit on April the 20th, but eventually burned up in the atmosphere. In turn, Russia has a hypothesis about a possible test of the Russian airspace forces of anti-satellite weapons. Some Russian Telegram channels claim that it was our people who dropped a Western satellite working over Ukraine, but this is an even less likely and even more verifiable hypothesis. The fact is that satellites do not stand still and do not hover over some country. Movement in space is possible only in orbit and at a certain speed. from 8 to 6 kilometers per second in low Earth orbit to 3 kilometers per second in geostationary orbit. It is almost impossible to dump a satellite in such a way that it falls exactly on Kiev or on any other strictly defined point on Earth. No one will be able to calculate at what speed, at what moment it would enter the dense layers of the atmosphere and how long it would decrease. Even after an accurate understanding of the orbit of the descending satellite, experts can only indicate a very approximate place of the object's fall. For example, for the RHESSI Space Observatory mentioned above, this is approximately over South America. No more than that. Comparing a falling spacecraft with a spacecraft returning from orbit is also incorrect here. The ship gives out an impulse at a precisely calculated time and corrects its trajectory with the help of engines during the flight. A falling satellite or any other celestial body is completely out of control. Yes, a number of countries do have technical capabilities to shoot down a spacecraft in orbit, including Russia. Russian media claims that the United States regularly speculates that Russia is allegedly capable and even preparing to destroy the American satellite group. There are missiles capable of shooting down objects in near space, and the corresponding tests were carried out by the United States, China, Russia. However, never before in history has any country in the world attacked an alien spacecraft. In fact, such an attack is directly an act of war. And by alien, I also mean other countries. Like, for example, an attack by a foreign ship on the high seas. Some types of impacts are likely and possible. There are, for example, satellite inspectors inspecting enemy vehicles, but a direct attack is not. So far, countries have destroyed only their own satellites as tests. Then the meteorite remains the most convincing hypothesis. And indeed, Ukrainian officials soon changed their testimony in this direction. The outbreaks in Kiev are connected with the fall of a satellite meteorite, according to the Ukrainian news agency. It's a meteorite, most likely from the Lyrid meteor shower. One meteor became a meteorite. The date of the maximum activity of this stream just falls on the period of April 18 to the 22nd. Russian military expert Alexei Lyankov told the RIA Novosti agency. Boris Shustov, scientific director of the Institute of Astronomy of the Russian Academy of Sciences, did not rule out this hypothesis either. According to him, it's quite possible. However, some other astronomers interviewed by Russian media doubt that the video captures the fall of any celestial body. They believe that meteorites fall differently than it looks on the videos received from Kiev. What was it in the end? Perhaps we have witnessed the testing of some weapons by Ukraine, maybe an unsuccessful launch of an air defense missiles, according to the Russian observers. Here's another take on the satellites, also from a Russian source. Within Kiev, a bright glow of an aerial object was observed in the sky. According to preliminary information, this phenomenon was the result of the fall of NASA. Earth Space Satellite, the head of the military administration, Sergei Popko, announced a completely different hypothesis later, adding that the air alert was announced so that no one would suffer from a breakdown, but the air defense system did not work with it. At the same time, the location of the American satellite has not been reported to the public, at least at that time, but the Americans responded. NASA satellites could have fallen near Kiev since on April 19 could not have fallen near Kiev since on April 19 they did not enter the Earth atmosphere. As for the RHESSI satellite, whose probable fall was announced by the Ukrainian authorities, the NASA website published the time for which the device was scheduled to enter the atmosphere. It is indicated as 3 hours 50 minutes a.m. in Kiev, and the flash in the sky over the city came much earlier, said NASA representative Robert Margetta, explaining that the Americans, together with the Pentagon, really planned to drop their spent satellite, but later, and definitely not over Ukraine. All satellites, both American and Russian, have areas of flooding, areas of landfall, both main and reserve. And that's how satellite, could be deliberately fallen near Kiev. It's unreal. Again, the Russians have a whole army division in their armed forces which controls the airspace up to the objects of the size of the tennis ball. It clearly knows what is in the orbit, under what number, where, and in what condition. And by the way, please see my videos about the Russian Space Forces, so you can learn what is it that Russia is doing on a daily basis and what objects they observe. But from the Russians too, there were no official statements on this topic. According to the former chief of the anti-aircraft missile army, Russian military expert Sergei Khatelyov, he spoke to the media too. Let's see what he said. "We need to go and see the wreckage, because no matter what falls, even fragments of anti-aircraft guided missiles, as a result of their detonation at high altitude, fragments, serial numbers, blocks remain. All this can be read, clarified. It could have been a test launch of some Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicle, and something went wrong in the flight program and it fell down." Now, this is according to the military expert Mikhail Khodoryanak. In turn, he noted an agreement with Russian media, adding that the hypothesis about NASA satellite should be dismissed as implausible. In addition, the interlocutor suggested that it could be some kind of means of an air attack or part of the Ukrainian missile system, for example, Thunder II. And then he says, "As a rocket engineer, I can testify from my first education that everything happens in technology literally a few seconds after the launch. The rocket starts tumbling, flies off for several kilometers, and falls down." Now, senior researcher at the Institute of Applied Astronomy of the Russian Academy of Sciences, candidate of physical and mathematical sciences, Nikolai Zheleznov, suggested that the usual space bolide could have been the reason to scare the residents of Kiev that night. "I had an assumption that this is connected with the Lyrid meteor shower, the maximum of which will be observed the following night. The stream itself began on April 16, and it is often accompanied not just by dust particles burning up in the atmosphere like a shooting star, but by bolides, meter-high bodies, objects that are also in this meteor shower." The astronomer noted that whether it is so or not, it is easy to investigate and check. Such objects flying into the atmosphere do not immediately burn up, leaving a characteristic trace, which in principle was observed on yesterday's videos. He is alluding to the date when it happened. The second characteristic moment, because of which such an assumption arose, Lyra is a non-descending constellation of the northern hemisphere. It is very easy to find it. Its main star, Vega, is the brightest in the firmament. This constellation is high enough in the sky, and the angle of entry is steep enough for the fallen object into the atmosphere. And it may also testify in favor of his hypothesis. By the way, on the same night, Ukrainian social sites posted photos with a tow truck that was carrying an object very similar to a flying saucer somewhere. There are no comments on this yet, so the published pictures may be just ordinary trolling on the subject, he said. So what was it? The hypothesis about the NASA satellite cannot stand the criticism, because it is unclear why the United States would want to land its old but still strategic satellite on the territory of Ukraine, for obvious reasons, because of the war presence of the Russian forces and a number of other reasons. The astronomical hypothesis seems to be most plausible, but here's another opinion. The strange glow that was observed in the sky over Kiev that night could probably have been caused by a UFO crash. This opinion was expressed in an interview with Russian media by a former rocket engineer and ufologist Sergei Sukhinov. The expert noted that the flash was very short-lived and no traces of the meteorite fall were found. So it happened, I think, a UFO crash. There are such spherical plasmoids, and I have been studying them for more than 20 years. They often fly in the sky of the Earth, large sizes, it's plasma. They sometimes really explode and fall, but at the same time, there are no material traces of them, explained Sukhinov. According to him, something similar could have happened to the Tunguska meteorite, traces of which were also not found. But this is not a ball lightning, but an artificial object. I believe that I found hundreds of tracks, photos of these spherical UFOs, and they really are the ships of an alien civilization. Recently, I have prepared huge materials for the Russian Academy of Sciences, which confirm that these huge plasmoids are precisely the creation of another intelligence. And if there are no material traces, and it's not a ball lightning, then it is certainly an alien space object, the scientists concluded. So we will see what develops, and I will let you know. I'll update you as I usually do about events in Ukraine, Russia, and Eurasia. And if you can support my research, please see the links in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel. Please subscribe to it. Thank you.